we go. All right, today is Thursday, the 1st of December, and this is the email that I sent out this morning. Again, I sent one out yesterday. I did a lot of work, believe me, this week on this movie project, and it started to go to hell quickly. So I'm pivoting here. We are going to do a MERN stack project, but we're going to start doing something else in just a couple minutes. The other thing too is in lieu of using Bootstrap, we're going to use another product that's called Semantic UI in here. All right. Why? Because a lot of projects are done with that, and I think it's important that you're at least exposed to it. All right. So as it says in there, today is day 70. Tomorrow will be a lab because I'm just getting this project basically off the ground right now. And we will be working on it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week as needed. And hopefully during that time we can finish it. And then I'm going to ask that you again try to take some ownership of it and pretty it up, etc., and make sure that it works, and then turn it in by the end of the semester. All right. So as it says, we're going to begin working on a new and improved MERN stack project using the Semantic UI as an alternative to Bootstrap. Now, I'm not going to click on any of these URLs here. All right. The first one, as you can see, is the main Semantic UI page. All right. Underneath that is the second one, which is a little introduction thing, and I may end up going back to that a little later. The Semantic Guide by Freed Codecamp is not very good because it's very short. The course that's out there, the second last URL, as it says, it's free, but it's 6 years old. So I've gone through about half of it, and it's not bad. I'm not going to say it's great. I'm not going to say it's terrible. All right. So, and then finally, the last one is just an article on transitioning from Bootstrap over to Semantic UI React. All right. So as mentioned, I went through this and it was giving me fits. So I went back and I said, well, what can we do where you'll still get something out of this and we can still finish it? So I went back to something that we started on a while ago that we never finished, and that was that to-do list. So the idea is what we are going to hopefully be able to do within a few days is we're going to start making this today. It's very simplistic. There's an H1 here for a heading. There's an input box here that you can add to-dos. When you click add, they will show down here, and each one will have a delete button. Now, I will tell you, I made this drawing myself, and maybe it looks crude because it is. All right. But when you go into Semantic UI, there's a lot of neat stuff you can do with buttons by just adding a line of code, literally. There's a button class that you can use. So if you wanted the buttons to be circular, if you wanted to have them to have different icons, for instance, if you wanted the add to be a plus button instead of the word add, I don't care what you do with it. Again, as always, I'm just more concerned with getting this thing done and getting some code out there. All right. So with that said, then I'm going to get started. And we're going to start pretty much the way we usually do in here. And what I mean is I am going to come in here. Let me move that out of the way. I'm going to come out to my desktop. So wherever you end up creating your stuff, with me, it's the desktop. So I'm going to right mouse click. I'm going to do my git bash here. And I'm going to do an npx create React app, and I called it MERN dash to do because we shouldn't have anything by that name. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter. You know that this is going to take a minute or two. All right, and while we're waiting, I just wanted to mention, I know I said I was going to go through these, but again, if you do go to the getting started page that's out here, they've got a lot of really good stuff in here. That's probably going to be more important than you going to anything else, in my humble opinion here. So if I go out there, it's not pretty, but it goes through the, what's that?
So it was npx create -react, and what was it else?
Oh, it's npx space create hyphen, react hyphen, app, space, and I called it MERN hyphen to do. So it's right here. Hold on, I'll bring it back up. So it's right here.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. And it's just about finished. So now, in order to be able to use this in many ways, being able to use this is a lot like it's a lot like using Bootstrap. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to Google, and I'm just going to Google here semantic UI, and I'm going to put in here CDN. All right. If you cannot read that, and I know maybe you can't, so I'll put it up here bigger. Just literally get into Google and put in that. All right. And when you do, the first thing that should come up, okay, after you put that in, is CDN, semantic UI CDN. I guess it's the second one, but it's cdnjs.com libraries right here. All right. You can also just go out to cdnjs.com, but then you got to search for it. If we bring this up, these are all the CDNs that are related to semantic UI. All right. We want only the second one here, just this one. So if you would please, and if I'm going too fast or if you can't see it, I'm taking for granted you're going to ask. But grab the second link here that says copy link tag right there. So copy that to the clipboard. And then let's go back into our project that we just created, our MERN to do. And let's go into public. And let's open up the index.html file. I am going to go into Visual Studio Code, but just give me a minute. So let's just go into here now. All right. And you can put it wherever you want as long as it's in the head section. You know that. So I'm just going to put it right up above my title line. So there is my link to semantic UI. All right. And make sure you save this when you get done. All right. And I'm going to close that. All righty. Okay. So now with my folder up here, I'm going to actually bring it up. I'm trying to look real quick. I do have this up here, but this is something else. So let me close this window. Close the folder. There we go. No, I don't have to save that. All right. And I'm going to grab my MERN to do, and I'm going to just drag it in here to Visual Studio Code. So now it's opened up in here. All right. Okay. So we will end up doing a bunch of different stuff in here, as you'd imagine. All right. We're going to make a back-end folder. We won't get there today. We'll get there early next week. What we're going to attempt to do here, I already showed you this picture, but I'm going to show it again. For now, we're just manually going to do the equivalent of almost creating a list. But what we will do early next week is we're going to bring MongoDB into here. And when you click add, not only will it add it into here, but it will also put it into a MongoDB collection. All right. And that's what we'll be getting to next week. All right. So in here, the first thing I want to do is I want to go into my source folder. And we've done this many times before. I want to go in there and I want to open up, or I should say, put a new folder in there under source. And I want that to be components. I'm trying to make this thing as component driven as possible. And I might have even taken it to an extreme, but you're going to have a lot of components in here. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is in our components, all right, we're going to start, the idea is hopefully by the end of the period today, we're going, and it may not sound like much, but we're going to have this built, this. I'm not saying it's going to be totally operational, but we're going to have this built. I've got a set of steps that I'm going through in here. I don't know if it's going to take a half an hour, if it's going to take an hour, what it's going to take. But when we get to that point, we're going to save what we're working on, and that's going to be it for today. All right. And I'm doing this, like I said, I'm trying to break it up over several days so we can be as deliberate about this as possible. So as we add new things we have not talked about before, we can immediately go through and start talking about them. All right. So under components, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right mouse click under components, and I'm going to make a new file that I'm going to call title.js. So what have we done so far? We created the new project, and then under the new project, we made, under our source folder, we made a components folder, and under our components folder, we now have put in a file called title.js. Hopefully, you either remember the shortcut if you downloaded the extension, and if you didn't, you'll have to manually type it in, but I'm going to put in RAFCE and hit tab, and that is basically creating the framework for what I want to do in here. All right. And I want to just change this line, and that's about it. So I'm importing React from React. I've got my arrow function. All right. Called title. And this right here is going to hold this. If you don't like the name, oops, I don't want to do that. If you don't like the name I used in here, to do app for the title, put in whatever title you want. But I'm going to put this in as an H1. And I'm going to put in to do app and close my H1. Okay. And then I'm going to save this. And I don't think I'm going to need it for anything else. So I'm going to close it right away. All right. Then next, some of this, again, will look familiar from stuff we've done before. I'm going to open up app.js. All right. You've seen this kind of thing before. I'm not going to worry about this logo file. I'm going to get rid of that. In fact, again, I'm going to just get rid of everything basically that's in here right now. All right, so it looks like this. And again, this is nothing new. We've done this before. All right, and I'm going to come in here and I will add a div that right now I'm not going to put any styling or anything in it. And I'm going to put in here title. Now, if I ran it right now, you should know this, it wouldn't work. All right, because I've got to come back up on the top here and I want to do what? Well, I want to import React from React. And secondly, I want to import title from /components/title. All right. That import, this app.css, I'm not going to touch that thing. All right. And what I mean by that is you're going to be doing the work on presentation for this. All right. So we've got title in here now. I'm going to do a file, save all. All right. And I'm going to view, I'm going to bring up my terminal. And I'm just going to do my npm. In fact, we haven't changed anything in here. So let's see what's in our package.json file right now. Probably not that much. Yep, we've got our npm start, so we can use that. I'm not going to worry about nodemon or any of that other stuff for now. All right, I'm just going to come in here and do my npm start. And hopefully it'll come up. It won't give me any errors. And it says to do app. Now, like I said, one of the things that you're going to be learning as we go through this is you're going to be learning some stuff about semantic UI. All right. And what do I mean? Well, I'm going to show you the first thing that we're going to take a look at right now. All right. We can leave that up and running. But what I want you to do is I want you to go back, and I guess we will have to open up our title file. All right. And where we've got this here, where do we want this? Hold on. Okay, we won't need this. In our app.js right here, where we've got this div, all right, let's add on to this class name equal, and then in double quotes, UI container center aligned, just like that. All right. So we added onto the div that we have inside of app.js, we added to it class name equals UI container center aligned. You'll notice how the words are spelled. You'll notice that there are no slashes or dashes in there. But I'm going to do a file save all, and I'm going to jump back into here, and you notice that it's centered. Again, I'm not lying. I'm not saying here, wow, isn't that gee whiz? But you get what we're doing, hopefully. All right. So that's the first thing I wanted to do, was get that title in there. So I'm not going to do this, but if I wanted to, I could put a check right here. All right. So that's done. All right. Next, we're going to add a form in here that's going to give us this. All right. And again, as mentioned already, I'm trying to keep this as deliberate as possible. All right. So I'm going to save here, and I'm going to go back into my components right here. I'm going to right mouse click and make another new file that I'm going to call form.js. All right. And this, like I said, will hold those form elements. I'm again going to do my RAFCE and hit tab. Now I've got a bunch of this built already. All right. So I've got my const form, I've got my return statement. Let's get rid of this div, because what we're going to do in here is literally create a form. All right. So I'm going to put in a form tag, class name equals UI form. All right. And notice if I just do that, all right, I'm going to go back and add something to this in a minute, but I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to put an input with a type equals text. All right. And for now, we'll also put a placeholder. And that's equal to add an item ... All right, just like that. And we need to close this tag up. All right. And if I do that and save now, so if I do my file save and I jump back to here, well, it should have shown me something. Oh, I haven't added it yet, so that's fine. All right. But right now, what's going to happen, let's just do that. Let's go back to app.js and let's add into here two things. First, we better bring in form. So let's import form from /components/form. All right. And then let's bring form up in here. All right. And I'm going to do a file save. I'll leave that up there for just a second in case I'm going too quickly. And let's see what it looks like in here. All right. Well, there's my add an item, and this is a lot bigger really than I want it to be. So we're going to cut that down. Okay. We'll cut that down quite a bit, and we'll do that in just a second. But the good news is right now, everything's working. All right. So let's go in and we'll add a couple of things to this. The going in here and putting this class name equal UI form did exactly what you think it would do. All right. It may or may not end up being center aligned right now. So let's put center aligned in here. All right. We'll put that in so it will be indeed center aligned. All right. Now, just so you know, much like Bootstrap, the semantic UI works with a grid system. One of the differences between Bootstrap and Semantic is Bootstrap is 12 columns wide, Semantic is 16. All right, is that big a thing? No, but I just wanted you to know that, and the way that you set this stuff up in here is a little bit different. All right, again, just so you're aware of that. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add some stuff in here. And if you say, what do you mean? Well, what I want to do is I want to basically come in here and I don't just want this. All right, because again, if you look in here, we now have this right there and we have this, but we don't have that button yet. And then later we're going to add this stuff. All right, but we don't have that button right now that says add. All right, so we're going to put it in. Now, in order to do all this stuff, we've got to run through a few hoops. It's somewhat similar to the way it is in Bootstrap. And what I mean is we're about to put in a div, and that div is going to have a class of UI grid center aligned. Then we're going to have another div with a class of row. Then we're going to have two more divs, all right, that are going to each have a thing with columns in there. All right. So if you say, well, you're going too fast, then let's just do this. Div, class name equal UI grid center aligned. And I think once we do that center aligned here, I don't think we need this one. So I'm just going to remove it. We can add it if we need it, but I don't think we need it because we're centering it right here. And everything is going to be inside of that div. All right. So for that div, for the end for that div, it's going to be right here. All right. And we're going to add some more stuff in here in just a second. And don't worry, like, well, better close that, I guess. There. So this is our grid. Then inside of our grid, we are going to put another div, and that's going to say class name equal row. And then we're going to put another div in there. And you don't say col, you say the word column. So it's going to be column, and then you have to let it know, whoops, you have to let it know how wide it's going to be. And again, you're working with 16, all right, a width of like 16 cubes or 16, whatever you want to call it, cells, whatever. And I'm going to say column 6 wide. All right, get rid of that. And now I'm going to take this input that we just created there, and we're going to put it in here. So that's the first thing that we've done. All right. So this div is in this div, which is in this div, which is in this form. All right. So we've got one of these done. So let's do the other one now. All right. I'm going to do another div, another class name equal column. This is going to hold that button. I did this manually before, but I think 2 wide will be big enough. If it's not, we'll make it 3 wide. All right. And then I'm going to come in here with a button. The type is going to be equal to submit. I'm going to put this over multiple lines just so it doesn't scroll. The class name is going to be equal to UI button. And we're just going to, we'll put there, I don't know, add. I think that's what I showed before was add. And I can actually bring this, the rest of this stuff up here. What you're going to start seeing as I put things in here, I'm going to start doing a lot of this. Now, when I go back and I do a file save, the system's going to go and push it back. But I want you to be able to see what I'm doing as I'm doing it. All right. Now, what we want to do next is this is going to be pretty important. This add an item. There's going to be a lot of code that's going to be associated with that. Again, what you see there in line 9, that is this thing that's right here. In fact, let me do this. That is this thing right here. That's what we're talking about right now. All right. So we want to take it and convert it basically from an input tag into what's called a control component. And control component are kind of really what's in the hallmark of being able to use React. Well, fine, Jeff, but we never talked about control component before. So let me just bring up, because what I did was I literally went out to the React site and I looked under components, and they do talk in here about control components. I need to do a better job than I'm doing as far as when I mention something, showing you the associated documentation. All right. Now, one thing I never sent out to you, this was on my list of things to do before our meeting, and I didn't. So I'm literally going to send it out to you right now. I should have in here, I should have a draft. There it is. And I'm sending this to you right now. We're going to go over both of these right now. Don't worry, you won't need them in here, but they're both in here for you as resources. That's fine. And what the heck are they? Let me show you. The first one is, what are control components in React? So what the author does in here is he explains the concept of a non-controlled component versus a controlled component. Let's just break it down and keep it really simple. When you're working with a controlled component, what you want to be able to do is have your app react in real time to whatever it is you're doing. Now, we've actually done a little bit of this. And what I mean is, if you remember, when we first got into the topic, of React, one of the things we did almost right away was we wrote that really simple app with 2 buttons on it, one that said plus and one that said minus. All right. And when you click the plus button, you had a little counter up there. It was incremented by 1. And when you click the minus button, it was decremented by 1. Well, those buttons were controlled components. They had code associated with them that they were meant to react, no pun intended there, but they were meant to do something when they were clicked. All right. In many ways, it's similar to when we use the click event, for example, in like C#. All right. But with these, what you can do is you can, as you're keying stuff in, if you want to, you can have components that basically react again right away. All right. The other thing I want to tell you about this, and the other thing that was in this guy right here, Robin Warwick, is kind of the father of React. And he's got a book that he puts out there for free that's called The Road to React. And I sent it to you just a minute ago. You can see it's 200 pages. Now, I'm not saying if you read this book that you'll become a React expert. All right. But if you decide that you want to go on and try to become a full stack developer, I would recommend that over time you do read this book. Now, the book is constantly being updated. So what he does is he puts basically, I think it's the last one out here. So you'll notice it's 2016 to 2018. But his new one, all right, you typically have to pay for. And you can get this in hard copy also. But I figured that this would be okay, you know, and I'm not going to go through any of it. But when you look in here, Introduction to React, the React basics, that's what you'd want to look at. And if you look here, there's controlled components right there on page 58. All right, and I know they won't map up, but I'm going to put it in there anyway. Now, let's see. Let me try to see if I can bring this way down. That's the same article, pretty much, is what I just showed you. All right. But he does a really good job in not that many pages of going over everything this is about. All right. If I have time this weekend, one of the things I have on my list of things to do, all right, is to go through and reread this book, go back and try to pick out what I consider to be the most important points. And I might even make like a PowerPoint presentation, not to go over it with you, but to send it to you. So you've got even more stuff, so to speak, that you can work with. All right. So again, what we want to do here is we want to come in and we want to take that input tag and turn it into a controlled component. That's what we're going to do right now. Now, I'm going to literally move these. Oops, that wasn't good. I'm going to take these, the type, and I'm going to move that down, and the placeholder, I'm going to move that down, and I'm going to do some work in here. I'm going to put in a couple more attributes. Where we put these doesn't matter. I could have put them after the placeholder, for example, but I'm just doing it like the way I'm doing it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a value. And the value is going to be input value. These are just names I made up here. All right. The other one is going to say on change. And I'm going to say equal handle input value on change. All right. So hopefully I'm doing it in such a way that you can tell that this is going to go with this. And what I mean is if you saw this, which we're going to write in a minute, that you'd know what it's supposed to be handling. All right. Okay. So we're going to come back up here and we're going to write some stuff in just a second, right there, the way we've been doing it. And if you remember, what we've been doing here is we've been concentrating basically in functional components on two different things, those being use state and use effect. All right, so for right now, we're going to come into here and we're going to add use state right there. All right, and now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to actually put that stuff in. Well, what stuff? Well, we've done this before where we've come in and done const and then put in our array. All right, and I'll have here input value, set input value, all right, and I'm going to set that equal to use state, and we're just going to set it equal to nothing. All right, the empty string. All right. Now, if you look, let me just save this right now. You don't have to do this, but if you look right now, if I go back to this, oh, whoops, if I go back to where we've got the program running, it looks like this, but I can't type anything in here. I can't remove anything that's in there. Okay, it just says input value right now. Yours probably has the other stuff in there where it said add an item, and that's okay. But we're going to fix that right now. All right. So in here now, I want to come in and I want to write that method. Okay. So I'm going to come in here and type in this. Const. And I'm just going to grab it from right here so I don't misspell it. All right, so const, I don't want that. And I want to write this right now. Okay. All right. Now, it's giving me errors because it needs some stuff. So equal, and it's going to need, just so you know, it is going to need that event handler, which we typically call E, or you call it EVT or whatever. All right. And we're going to put in an arrow function. All righty. And we only need a line of code in here. And that is set input value e.target.value. Now, if I do nothing else this class period, I want to make sure you understand what's happening in this bit of code right here. All right. What this is saying is we have associated this routine right there with this input box. All right. So what we're telling it in there is we want, anytime we type something in there, we want it to immediately be updated. Let's see if that indeed worked. All right. And it's not. But the good news is, hopefully at least, you know why it's not. I have not yet added a couple things that I need to add. All right. Okay. So what we're saying in here is every time we make a change into our input box, we want to change the state. We want to change the state of input value, which we called right there of input value. All right. So anytime that changes, we want this routine to be called. And what that routine should be doing is it should be grabbing the text that we are putting in. All right. It should be handling the text that we are putting in to that input box. All right. Okay. Now we're gonna come in and we're gonna do something else. And what do I mean? Well, let me do a file save all just so I've got it saved, so I've got everything. All right. You've looked in here and you noticed that we've got title and we've got form in there. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with what we're doing right now. It is working. Okay. But to be honest with you, it could be done a little bit better. What we want to do is to break this thing up so that each one of these is in their own section. Now, we could just put it, I could put a div tag here, and I could put a div tag here and here, but I don't want to do it that way. Instead, what we're going to do in here is, first of all, we're going to come in and we're going to, under our components, we're going to add another component. So under components here, I want you to add a new file, and we're going to call it section.js. Section.js. Okay. And there it is. And again, I'm going to do my RAFCE and hit tab. All right. And there's really not that much that we're going to have to do in here. We're going to have to change two things. Let me take this for now, at least, and put it over multiple lines. You don't have to. And when I save it, it won't be over multiple lines anyway, but I'm just showing you quickly what I'm doing. The first thing is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to put inside of curly braces the word children. All right. Then I'm going to come down in here, and again, I'm going to put in curly braces, and I'm going to put in the word children. Children. All right. So I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to give you a second to do that, and then we're going to talk about what that is and why you might want to do that. All right. So make sure you go in. So again, looking in here quickly, in our components folder, we now have form.js, section.js, and title.js. All right, that's what's in our components folder. All right, and in here, we just added this. Previously, we only had the open and close parens. These are props. That's information that we're going to be handing down. And guess what it's going to be? It's going to be title, so we'll have the title, and then it's going to be form, so we'll have the form. All right, so again, I'm going to do a file save all. And again, I'm going to jump back into my app.js file. All right, now I want to make a couple changes in here. The first thing I want to do is I want to import section from /components/section. It's gray because we're not using it yet, but we're going to right now. All right. And that is, we're going to go in here and we're going to type in section. And I'm going to put the title underneath there. All right. And tab it. And then I'm going to put another section tab in here. And I'm going to put the form in there. All right. Now, a natural thing to say from all that is, okay, that's fine. Why'd you do that? What did that buy us, etc. As your programs get more and more complex, you are going to end up having more and more components. All right. I may or may not have shown you this, but I mean, for example, I think it's the Brad Traversy one. He goes in there and he goes in and he brings up YouTube. All right. And he says, okay, when you're in YouTube, everything that's in here is a component. This whole thing itself is a component. This search box is a component. This thing, these over here, they're all components. This is a component. These are components, etc. And the reason that you do that is as your apps get more and more complex, what you typically end up finding is that you have more and more, all right? You have more and more where you've got things that are going to be duplicated. So rather than constantly keying the same stuff in, you can put it into a loop or do whatever you need to do and build things that way. All right. Now, I did go in and hopefully I can find it. It's in one of my messes here someplace. Don't need that. That was the control components. There. I went in for React Children, just typed that in, but then I thought, well, you know what? Let's go in and actually look at the one or try to find the one that was in react.org, reactjs.org. Okay? Because what they talk about in here is they talk about children. Okay, I read this article too right before class. This one was in Netlify. All right. And just the beginning is what I basically read. It says children are misunderstood. I'm talking mostly about React children. All right. And as it says there, chances are if you've written React before, you've dealt with props and you've dealt with children in some way. But what they end up going through in here is very similar to what I've been talking to you about. In other words, all right, we're talking about trying to take and segregate bits and pieces of our program out. All right. So you could, again, I've given you a bunch of things that if you're interested, you can go in there and read them. If you don't care, then you won't. All right. But this is what we've got, and we want to add a little bit more right now. Down here, in here, if you remember, we've come in here, and right now we've got this. So we basically have built so far this. All right. But now we want to come in and we want to do this. All right. So that's what we're going to do next. All right. And how are we going to do that? You may have already guessed, but what we're going to do is, and let me close a couple of these. So I'm going to close this for now. And even though I'll need that, open that again, I'm going to close that for now and save it. All right. But I'm going to come into my components, and yeah, I'm going to add yet another component in here. So I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to put in new file, and I'm just going to call it list.js, and it's going to be our list of to-dos eventually. All right. And again, I'm going to put in my RAFCE and hit tab to get me started. All right. And we're going to put a little bit of code in here. After we put in this code, we're going to go back into app.js and we're going to see where we are right now. And that's pretty much where I wanted to get to today. Like I said, I didn't know if it would take an hour. I didn't know if it would take more time than that or less time than that. But let's just go on. So we've got our import React from React, our const list. I'm going to take this div and again, put it over multiple lines. And I'm going to get rid of the word list because I don't need it. All right. Hopefully I've mentioned this to you already. If I haven't, then shame on me. But nobody's ever asked, why do we do this? Why do we do that? I mean, what's the goal of that? All right. And the goal of that is that whatever we put in here, what we're doing is we're creating a component. All right. That's what we're returning is our created component. All right. The reason I'm telling you that is when it does that, it needs to call a routine that's called create component. That is a React routine. So it's making a call to React dot create component. That's why you need to put that line in there. All right. I mean, there can be other reasons as well, but by and large, that's the reason that you do it. All right. So in here, you've already learned what some of this stuff means. So I'm going to put in class name equals UI grid center aligned. Again, I'm not going to go over that stuff anymore. All right. And then we're going to add a row. Oh, that was great. All right. And inside of there, I'm going to again have two columns. So all right, there's my first one. And for now, this is going to be an example to-do item. I'm going to make it an H2 so it's nice and big. All right. And I'm just going to say test to-do item. We could put anything in the world we wanted to put in there. It's going to be removed pretty quickly anyway. All right. Then after that, I'm going to put in another div. And the class name again is going to be column. And again, it's going to be too wide like it was before. All right. This will be a button. Class name is going to be equal to UI button. And it will say delete. All right. And we end one div, we end another div, we end another div, and we've exported. So that's everything. I'm going to give you a second to key that in. All right, I'm going to do a file save all on here. And I'm going to jump back into my app.js file. Why? Because, well, we want to bring that stuff in now. So in other words, we want to come in here and we want to import list from /components/list. All right. And we want to add that in here as yet another section. Like that. All right. So file save all. And let me come back to here and to here. So that's what we have right now. Okay. And if I went in there from the picture that we had to begin with, this one. All right. So let me take this, cut it way down. So if you kind of compare that with what we have here, no, it's not perfect, but there's our input value, our add, there's our test, and there's our delete button. All right. So what you are going to be responsible for as we keep going on in this, all right, is prettying this up. All right. I don't know. There's a very good chance that in summer, I think I may be teaching this class again. All right. And what I'm very interested in, and as always, all I've ever asked is that you be honest, is if people say, hey, why did we spend so much time on this? Why didn't we spend more time on this? I read those. I mean, I don't get the comments directly. I just get a culmination of what people said. I do not get those forms. But if you think, hey, I wish, we spent way too much time on React, then let me know that. Then I'll spend less on it next time. Now, I want to go back and I want to look at one more thing, because technically in here, this should be working and it's not. So I want to go back and I want to check my code here, which I have got out here longhand. So I transposed it, but I want to take a quick look at that. So that would be in my form.js. Right, so I'm going to take a look at what's in here. All righty. Form grids. Well, there's a mistake. That should be center aligned, not centered aligned. So that's one mistake. Text item. Line input value. That should be the same as that. And it is. Handle input value on change. That should be what this is. Okay. Still not giving me anything in here. Well, I'm going to have to go back. Okay. Let me tell you what we're going to be doing. All righty. So what we will end up doing as we go on in here is a lot of this part in here is already done. But when you click add, it's got to go into the list that's in here. All right, right now, as you can tell, it doesn't do anything. When you click delete, it should remove it from here. All right, and the way that I've got it right now is it's not even asking. If you click delete, it's just removing it. All right, we could always change that. So there's no formatting done in here. It doesn't look very nice. I mean, you can tell that by looking at it. All right, but we want to build ourselves a complete to-do list. This is where I hope to get by Monday. All right. And what we're going to do for now is we're going to simulate using a back end. We won't create the back end until like Tuesday or so. All right. But when we create the back end, and we'll create a folder, we'll call it back end, etc. We'll do all that kind of stuff that we've been doing. But for now, we're concentrating on the front end. All right. And there's probably, I'm going to go back, like I said, and look at my code, but what this is all looking and working the way I want, except I thought what was going to happen in here is I was going to be able to type anything I wanted and I could hit delete, but I've got a mistake in my code. I've got to find out where that is. I'm going to do that as soon as we're done today. All right. In fact, if I find it, I'll send it out to you. All right. So this is what I was hoping to get through today. All right. And like I said, what we want to do is we want to make this work. What I want you to do. So if you look in here, let's see, there's some stuff on the grid system. There was that UI. Yeah, some more stuff on the UI here. But if you do want to go out and do this, all right, if I go out to udemy.com here, if you don't have an account, you sign up for free. They don't give you emails other than to tell you when they've got stuff on sale. All right. And in here, if I type in semantic UI free, I don't know if it'll find it from there or not. But that's how I found it. It's not, of course, it's not showing it now. All right. But there, that is that free course. It's about 2 or 3 hours long. Again, it's older, but I'm giving you some time today that you could go look at that, look through that. If you don't want to do that, at a minimum, before Monday, please go out to semanticui.com and have a look at the get started, which is going to bring your stuff up over here, and take a look at some of the stuff we've looked at. We've already put in a button. So there's the stuff on button. Notice very similar to what we've done with Bootstrap. You can use colors. All right. There's also, you can go and you can add labels as it says. Okay. There are icons you can add. So if you want to, as I said before, you can go and you can make that add button, make it a plus sign or something like that. And then where we've got the delete, you can make that a minus sign. Or with that delete, there probably is an icon for like a trash can. All right. This is what I want you to do. So this is what we're going to have to finish next week. And when we get done with the entire project, we are going to upload everything out to the cloud where we should be able to get our own URL and then run this. All right. And give anybody the URL and they should be able to run it. Okay. So like I said, that's what we're going to be doing for the next few days. Unless anybody has any questions, that's as far as I got today. All right. So we will pick it up on Monday. Be prepared to do some typing. I'll talk to you then.